Hi, everybody. It's Nico Bernie Miller. I'm the CEO of Change 3, and thank you for joining me for Growing Happily. So, today we are talking about the toughest topic in growth and marketing, and that's lead generation. And actually, we're going to go deep into this topic today. I am joined by a beautiful, wonderful host, a co-host, an expert, 30 years telecom veteran that I have known since her days back at Sprint when we were footloose and fancy free. So I am joined by Jen Deneen.
Oh,
Here
you
you
need
go,
to say
dear. Hi. Hey, Jen.
hey.
Hi. So everybody who's joining us today on the stream, if you're in the VIP webinar, thank you very much for joining us. If you're just coming in, grab a drink, get a seat, get comfortable, because we're going to talk about one of the biggest topics for growth. How do you increase and improve the quality of the leads in your funnel? So we're going to pick the top art in a way that you might not be used to. We're not going to talk about how to improve your creative or how to get more web traffic or anything like that. All those things are part of lead generation. And Jen has this great graphic that she's going to show a little bit later on to show you how many facets are in this whole topic, which I'm sure you guys are all dealing with. What we're going to talk about today is the mind work, because that's really where your growth is going to come from, and your strategic initiative and your success is when you got your mind right, then your heart will be right and your actions will be right. So today, what I want to kick off with is the first part of how do you, because the title of today's conversation is, how do you fix gaps, which are holes in your lead generation? How do you fix them? And so the first thing that I always like to do is to remind us that it's really about building relationship with your future customer. And so that requires you to do a few things. The first one is to know who your future customer is, right? And then the next thing is to remember that they're people rather than leads. Jen, what do you think about that?
I think it's absolutely true. I kind of have a slightly funny story once where I was working for somebody who built a product, and they said,
Mhm.
okay, we think we would love for you to go get this customer. It's a grandma who shops at Michael's. And it was a technology product. And I'm like, can you hang on a second? And we had to do some homework to find out who the customer really was. They built a product before they understood that. So to me, it was just one of those moments where you're like, yeah, that's the story. That's the way not to do it. But we got lucky
Right.
and we found
To
the right
to
customer.
find to try and find a customer for your product, right? You think about who the customer is and how you can serve them, right? Absolutely. So when we do our webinars or our virtual events, we always ask people questions about the topic. And so we had a bunch of executives answer two questions. And so I'm gonna show one of them on screen to just prompt our conversation for us and for everybody else. Now, I don't know about y'all people, but I have very poor eyesight. So I will look at this and be like, oh Lord, what is this? So I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger for a minute so everybody can see. And it basically is, what are the biggest gaps in your current lead generation strategy? So, and now I'll make it small again. And, it basically boils down to like not enough quality. So Jen, what do you think about this when you look at this kind of data? What pops to mind?
Well, I feel like I'm not getting to the right place. If I'm not getting enough qualified leads, I'm just not finding the people who have a need for what I'm selling, right? Like
Oh, good
for
point.
sure,
Yeah.
and especially when you're in IT, there's so many different places that people hang out, publications that they're reading, there's paid media that you can do. And if you can figure out where your customers go to get the
Mhm.
resources that they need to help them figure out how they're going to build their IT architecture, what have you, then you can kind
Mhm.
of solve that with some paid media would be my go-to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. So you picked it apart in a great way. So enough quality leads. So I look at that in a few different facets. So marketing, right? Us, when we think about quality, we think about different things than salespeople, right? And salespeople, they have to be the one that actually make that human to human connection. They're talking, they're conversating, they're trying to call them back and sending them quotes and stuff like that. And so for us, our signals as marketers of what we think is good when someone has expressed interest and they're qualified, right? And they're ready to go are different than when you talk to salespeople. So, that's always something that I like to remind us marketers that, certain actions do give us a signal that people might have an interest, or maybe they're exploring, or they might be a good fit. But to get to the quality, it requires the hardest thing in demand generation. And so that's what Jen and I are going to spend a lot of time talking about today, and that's nurturing. So I love to give this analogy, and guys, forgive me if it's too wild, because I'm still a wild lady. But I think about demand generation or lead generation like dating. To me, I feel like that's the most salient way for you to think about it and to imagine how you progress and nurture your funnel. So let's say you got set up on a blind date. It's kind of like lead generation. Maybe you send a cold email. Maybe you've got an ad, right? All these are like a blind date. Like they don't know you. They're not, but maybe they're open to it. And so they meet you. But it's like showing up at that blind date, butt naked with a wedding ring. Like, hey, let's get going, right? Like, I'm not ready for either one of those things, right? And I think that's always the thing that I try to remind myself, and that I try to remind my clients, is that it's actually a journey. So when they first discover your brand, that potential customer might not be ready to buy your shampoo, your muffins, go to your comedy show, buy your IT solution, your cloud service, or whatever it is you're offering. They might not be ready to buy it at that particular moment. And they might not even have given you permission to, they might not be ready to give you permission to sell to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like, back to what I said earlier, it's this relationship mindset. So it's like you meet your future customers, they meet you. And so now the question to ask us is, and ask you, Jen, I'm asking you is, all right, so when future customers meet you, how do you get them to want to keep talking to you? Kind of like dating, right? What's that expression of when it comes to lead generation? What do you think?
I think you have to know your customer as well as you can. So that helps figure out, okay, I'm going to be experimenting as a marketer. Like, how am I going to talk to this person? And it's the same thing in dating. Like, you might get there and, try to get that conversation going, and you kind of have to keep trying a little bit if you want to, right? So you'll have to just you're kind of trying to broach a topic that they're interested in, ask a question, learn a little bit about their needs, but having a really authentic voice to me is super important. So wherever you're selling and it's your brand and you really care about it and you really believe what you have will help someone, kind of helps drive that conversation. Because I think most of the time, Nico, when I'm talking to people who have conviction and love what they do, like you and so many people I know, it becomes more natural. So in your marketing, then you can play with, how will I talk to these prospects and customers, because you're going to want to keep them and keep talking to them. How do I just keep a natural conversation going? And I know when to back off, and I know when to ask for a little bit more or make an offer. So,
oh gosh, I love the way you said that.
It's experimentation and
just
kind of having like a National Geographic mindset. Like, I'm going to go discover out.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Natural conversations, curious for discovery, and that you're trying different things. That's like marketing perfection. And so that takes me to the next thing that I want to put into your head. So the first thing I wanted to put in you guys' head is like, instead of thinking about lead generation, let's think about relationship building, relationship mindset. And so the second thing is intelligence. And so Jen, you just eased me right into that, right? Well, now we live in a world of AI, right? An era of AI, whatever you want to call it, right? Age, I think that's what it is, the age of AI. And so intelligence is like on tap now. I went to a big conference with Microsoft with their new Copilot launch. And so they're like, oh yeah, now it's expertise on tap. So you don't actually even need to be smart anymore. You guys can have half of a brain lobe and be, and go talk to AI, get your Copilot or your Gemini or whoever your favorite Chat GPT, who's your favorite, and they'll infuse you with some intelligence. But I'm always I go counter, right? I go counter to the current. And so I would say I would not rely solely on tools like that. But I would definitely, in whatever stage you are in your career, in whatever role you're in, if you're a marketer, if you're a seller, a business development, an executive, a CEO, a small business owner, whatever you are, this is the moment, guys. This is when you got to lean in and pick up a couple little new skills. And so definitely learning how to use some of these AI tools is an absolute table stake these days. It is a must-have skill in just about any role that you're in, for a variety of reasons that I'm not all going to go into today, but mainly because your competitors have people who are figuring out how to use these tools to improve their understanding of the market, to spot trends, to improve their communications, to personalize more effectively, to gather more information, to affect, enhance, and improve, and mess up marketing. Right? It does good and bad. Okay. So it's so many things that it's doing. And so for us as marketers, sellers, and business owners and professionals, it is absolutely should be right at the top of our priority list is, okay, let me not only learn how to deal with AI applications, become a little mini prompt engineer. Let me learn how AI thinks. Let me expand my knowledge so that I'm understanding how algorithms that are AI powered, how they work, so I can, crack the code, optimize them, and use them. But more importantly, how can I gather more intelligence? So what I'll say is Jen, what do you think about signals, right? So if we think about intelligence, and yesterday when we were talking, or the day before we were talking, you were talking about marketing automation and trigger emails and stuff like that. So what are those hot signals that everybody should be looking at to, think about how to take their next step in that journey with a customer?
Well, from what I've seen, from what I've worked with, we'll first start this conversation with like some emails and talking to people. And I work a lot on creating webinars right now. It's a great place to kind of work with some of the signals. And if somebody, wants to watch a webinar and then they maybe check something else out on your website, maybe, they download something, maybe they ask a question about something, they make an inquiry. To me, those are like, oh, wow, okay, those are some signals I really like. Because I know that they're curious and they're probably trying to solve for something. I think kind of trying to tie back with what you're saying about the AI, being able to like have something that helps you look at that. Like I'll try to look myself because my webinars don't have 10,000 people watching them. Hey, maybe it's a couple hundred. I can get ideas about engagement, how long they spent on some things. Did they ask a question? And then I can kind of decide. I can say, oh, maybe that's a competitor that's actually in here asking these questions. Maybe that's one I don't want to go back to. Or maybe I do. But anyway, you can kind of get a feel from your data, but also with like the AI tools, some of the things I'm seeing built in is, hey, here are some things you might want to look at. Look at how high your engagement was today. What was that about? So I'm optimistic about the AI because I use it in that context. And then I also use it to say, hey, how can I talk to my customers? Can you help me, whatever bot you want to use, can you help me kind of craft a few email options, a few nurture options? I want to talk to this customer type, and then this is kind of what I want to say. And then I'll just keep building with a few more, just natural prompts. You don't have to go learn anything special. You can just go train your bot a little bit and say, can you just give me some more ideas? You save all that information, you can bring it up again, and then you can add on it and learn. So it's kind of like a continuous learning piece. And I think that's the part that I'm really excited by. And there's tools that are bringing all the AI in. I don't know, Nico, you and I have talked about HubSpot, but there are so many others where there's integrated systems
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
There's a
have their
ton.
own little universities to help teach you how to be self-taught in their platforms. And you can probably manage like your whole marketing spectrum right from some of these different solutions that are out there. So finding the one that's right for you and your business, that's probably the big homework to do.
Absolutely right. And it all starts with your vision. So back to remember that it's people, not leads. I know we say lead generation, but it's people, and we're trying to build a relationship with them, and that relationship is based on what we know about them and what they need. And so that takes us to excuse me. Well, okay, signals. And you're learning things about them. You maybe know their title, you know something about their company. You know if they came to your website, maybe you know what they're doing on social media. You can kind of snoop around, and there are tools that'll help you do that. Excuse me, guys, I have to cough. 1 second. I'm gonna cough. I didn't want to blow out your eardrum. Sorry. I'm gonna use this opportunity to take a sip too. But other signals that we look at Change3, and we're actually integrating AI into our big database architecture. We're building a solution called Be Insightly.
Oh, nice.
And so we have a ton of signals. There's intent signals, right? Maybe you've seen them, companies that have intent data, which is somebody at that account searched for a keyword. And so they flagged the company. And then you could acquire contacts in those accounts. It may not be that person that did the search, but somebody associated with that company's search. So those are intent signals. Very interesting. A lot of conversation around that in the last few years. The jury's still out whether intent signaling does or doesn't help. But it does help if you're doing account-based marketing and you're selling to businesses. And so join us next week because we're going to be talking about account-based marketing, ABM, with the folks at ZoomInfo. So intent signals are interesting. Technographic signals are also very interesting. Do they use a particular type of software, a system? Are they a T-Mobile customer? Are they an AT&T customer? What do they use? And there's a whole bunch of sources for technographics. You can get some from big data vendors like ZoomInfo or SalesIntel. You can get their tools that'll help you understand, what kind of email application they're using, and that tells you what kind of stack they have for their productivity. And you can find out who their internet provider is, what their phone systems are, right? There's a lot of different technographic signals that you can procure or acquire and integrate into your data. So depending on what you're selling, you might want to act on those sorts of things. There's probably 47, I'm not kidding you, 47 other signals that you could track. And so we try to weave all those things together into what we call a tapestry of interest, and choose the best accounts, the best titles, the best people based on their behavior. Did they open your email? Did they visit your website? How long did they stay? Did they speak to somebody, right? We try to use all that to choose the very best people to talk to. And that all goes into what I call intelligence. So what's the action item for y'all people who are watching? So you got a relationship mindset, and now you got to think about what's all that information that you can gather about your future customer and how they're interacting with you and how they're gathering information that you can act on to do the next thing. That's a big part of this hard chore that we call lead nurture. And the next thing that's super big deal is thought leadership. Now, Jen was real low key and humble about it. I'm gonna leave that on the screen for a little bit. And she was like, well, I run these webinars. Come on, Jen, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing. And then we can talk about how that rolls into thought leadership.
Okay, so you know what? I like to work on technology solutions. I've been lucky enough in my career to get to work on things that are pretty cutting edge. It's like, oh gosh, this is a first here and a first there. And I had been working in like wireless, working on with solutions for businesses like network slicing and some really interesting things with like hybrid networks with 5G. So you can, you're never going to drop anything in your manufacturing plant. That data is going to stay really going where it needs to go. By the way, if my people go and leave the site and go on, they're still connected really well. So everything works together cleanly, more securely. And so I get to make webinars about thought leadership on these types of topics. And it's, such a great time in the industry for that. So we bring all that together, and we're trying to reach people who are starting to really think about, hey, what is this stuff? And can I include this into my IT architecture planning? It's kind of different from the past. I'm not having to plug something in and have this dedicated bandwidth here necessarily. You probably still need that, but for certain applications where mobility is really important and you just have to have this perfect performance, we can use these other things. And by the way, maybe I could get a slice for an hour or a slice for a day. I don't necessarily have to have it permanently, depending on what my needs are. So I've had a lot of fun with that. So thank you, Nico. I don't know where you wanted me to go with that, but we're trying.
No, that was perfect. So talk to me about, so let me ask you a question. Well, what kind of content? You talked about webinars, and I've heard you say in the past that you felt like webinars were like one of the best ways to engage and to present thought leadership. So talk to me more about that.
So what we've been doing is I go get with sales leaders, and I'll go with industry experts, some analysts. We'll try to bring them together. We'll paint the picture. We'll show the diagrams. But what I find is in those conversations, so the sales leaders can really help explain what's going on. They're out there with the customers. They're seeing the use cases, and these use cases, like the people who are maybe in the analyst shop might not ever dream up. They become real, and we get to start telling these great stories about it. And it's been just really, really cool, because we started a webinar program recently that I was working on, and it started almost from the ground up when I got there. And now I'm seeing that thought leadership content really percolate. I mean, we've grown our subscriber base 4 times, 2 platforms, just people are looking, people are coming back to the destination to find out more. And I think, to me, that's what's really interesting. I think every business actually has an opportunity with webinars to say, I can have the thought leadership piece with the webinar, or what's really cool or important to me, what problem do I think I'm solving? Hey, I do know who my customers are. I'm going to try to reach them and get to them this way. But then it's not just the thought leadership, it's kind of all the way through the life, that that lifetime relationship you have with your customer, where you can have different webinars involved for different things, all the way from awareness to loyalty. And I didn't realize when I started on this how powerful it was. And even IDC says the webinar is one of the best things you can do in your business to help communicate about what you do, and help your customers just be able to take as much advantage of your products and services as possible, so they can get the most value, which is what I think we all really want when we're trying to work on this stuff. So
great point. Webinars are, and people sometimes feel like, oh, webinars, that's not that exciting. Well, you know what, a lot of times in relationship building, it's not about exciting, right? It's actually about stability and consistency, reliability, and something that people can count on. So let's talk more about thought leadership, right? Webinars are great. Not all of us feel like our topics lend themselves to webinars, right? If you have complicated topics like what you talked about, which was great, or even some of the stuff that we do. And I want you to show your slide, because I'm going to get into, okay, well, what do you need to do to fix some of these lead gen gaps? So the first thing is change your mindset, right? Think about you're building relationships, not just building numbers, right? Or filling a funnel. Make sure you're making time for yourself to learn some new skills, how you can leverage AI, because AI is going to definitely streamline a lot of things. And then start thinking about what's your lane when it comes to thought leadership. So I like to do this for myself, is when you have a complex solution, it's easy to do things like webinars and white papers and make informative videos and stuff, because your solution's really complicated. So there's a lot to talk about. But what if you are a baker and you have a bakery, on the corner of 7th and Central in Phoenix, right? Or wherever. I don't even know if that's a real intersection, so forgive me, guys. But let's say you're a baker, and you're old school, you're bringing back French patisserie, and you've opened this little bakery, or maybe you inherited it, and you're like, well, how do I, all this stuff y'all people are talking about, how does that even have anything to do with me? I'm a baker, right? And I'm trying to get foot traffic. There's still thought leadership people There's still thought leadership. You as a baker, you have so much knowledge about how do you make the perfect muffin and how do you make your croissants crisp, and right, there's 47,000 things you could talk about that your future customer would be like, oh, snap, right? And they would watch a video, they would join a webinar, they would take advantage. And I'll give you a great example of one of our little clients. It's a local business out here in Globe, Arizona, which is where my new headquarters is. It's in Southeast Arizona, out in the mountains in the sticks. And Round Mountain Bakery is her company. And when I met her a few years ago, she didn't have a website. She had a really great business. She makes these royal iced cookies. And so she was just like a local business. And so we said, hey, we'll help you build a website. We did it for free. We helped her pick her platform, which was Shopify. And she's just taken off since then. We helped her build a website, and she starts to do classes. She does these classes. Now she's doing things with social media. She's got a little food truck. I mean, just going crazy. Why do I bring her that example up? And go check them out and order a dozen cookies. Because a lot of us go, oh, I don't have anything to share. And what I always like to do is encourage people who are listening, all my followers, especially small business owners, is every single one of us as a professional in our job, we absolutely have something to share.
Oh, for sure. And for like the local stuff, I used to work in local, working on different things, and all the mom and pop shops, all the people who put their heart into something that they're making, they have a story. And people love those stories. And you don't need a 15-minute webinar. You might just do videos for social media to share your story and show what's going on at your shop and what new recipes you've tried. I had a friend who used to have a gelato shop, and she made all her own flavors and everything. And so there was like a couple stories a week about, hey, come try this one. I mean, stuff you never heard of. And that builds community, and people share. I mean, that's good stuff. And
yes, I love it. I love it.
So you got to ride on that.
Absolutely. So let's stay on topic, because we could go on everything. I want you to show your slide. And while you get that prepped up, what I want to do is I'm going to show the next question we asked, which is, what are the things that you want to improve? So here we go. And I'm going to make it big because, again, I'm old and I can't see anything. So which tactics are you most interested in improving? So those executives that we surveyed, email was at the top, followed by paid ads, almost exactly the same number of people. And then they said SEO, right? And so I'll make that small so it can be up for a little bit. And then Jen, I'm gonna want you to show your slide, because all the things we just talked about, thought leadership, that's all about creating content, figuring out what's your content lane, how do you produce it, is it webinars, is it something else? But some of these things have a lot of moving parts. So, is it easy to do good email? Is it easy to, improve your paid ads? Talk to us about kind of your thoughts about that, these lead gen gaps. What are some of the areas where are you surprised by these challenges that people have indicated?
I'm not surprised at all, because everything takes time, right? So to expect yourself, depending on the size of your business and what your staff is like and what kind of, talent you can hire, I would say you got to be a little bit gracious with yourself to do some learning, because even just getting your email nurtures, like you're going to want to practice with those a bit. We talk about these things called call to action, and I don't know that I even love these words, but it's like, hey, you're just like, hey, hey, notice this. You might be interested. If you're interested, I don't want you to miss this. But finding your way to have like the phrases that you want, it can take a little bit of time. You'll also like think about, hey, what else do I want to show with these email messages? Sometimes you want to do pictures. Sometimes those don't go through on email because they can get blocked and stuff. But there's just different things to consider. But then, when you're thinking about different aspects, like I'm probably jumping from nurture, we start having like some folks who say, yes, I would like to maybe learn something more, or I pull some other information and look at it. I watch a webinar, maybe I watch just a little video or something, and you go, hey, I've got to figure out now what what to do with that, because I don't want to overstep, but I don't want to understep. And that
Yeah.
takes me, like, I think that's where we're all still learning. We've got, back at some of the businesses I work with, there's a big engine that's trying to figure all that out and go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how many people at this company are looking at this kind of stuff? And can we figure out if there's a buying group so we can go and try and help them with their issue? But for me, it's just more like what I want to figure out kind of at that point, because I'm kind of one of those people that says, sometimes it's really great if you can get to that personal contact. So
Mhm.
I have enough where it's time for somebody who it could be like, say, a sales development rep, somebody who can just kind of call and check in. But hey, is that person somebody that has a relationship with someone who works at our company? Like, I'd like to kind of try to figure that out, because having that contact actually will make for a better next step on a conversation. So we'll work through those types of things just to make sure we can find out. And even if someone calls, it's like, hey, just wanting to check in. We have some things that could help you out. We want to make sure you're aware of them so you know that they exist. We can fit this in wherever it helps you out the most, So kind of just trying to
Right.
work that way, because I think people are pressed for time. People have so much information coming at them that kind of giving them a little breathing room is helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Something that you and I talked about is, and also I want everyone, especially if you're dealing with sales teams or you have a sales team, it's getting harder to reach people in this age of AI, right?
Yeah,
People screen their calls more, they work from home and office, so the business number that you have for them might not always reach them. Not everybody will give you their cell phone number when you're doing business with them. More people will, and it's okay for you to use it, especially if they've made it available to you, like in their email signature or what have you. That means they're saying, call me on this number. But etiquette and social norms are evolving, and so it can be a little bit murky, and maybe you're not sure, not feeling as confident as you used to. um, at the end of the day, what I always like to say is, if you're respectful and if you're relevant, then you'll have a reason, right, to have that conversation. So I called somebody a couple of years ago in response to a referral. One of my clients was like, hey, call this executive. She wants to talk to you about a webinar program. Okay, no problem. And so, I did as I was asked, right? And I called, and it happened to be like 11 o'clock at night. This individual was in Europe, right? Had no idea. And this individual was in Europe, and answer the phone, because the phone number that this individual was an executive used was a mobile phone number, right? So here I'm calling, and she was like, who what? But I was respectful, I was relevant, and so that gave me the reason. I told my reason why I was calling, and so it was fine. She was like, oh yeah, call me the next day or whatever, and it worked out. So it means you've got to be prepared for that. You could be calling somebody on their mobile phone. You might not even know. And so you've got to be, prepared for that sort of thing. And you've got to actually prep and support your salespeople that
absolutely.
marketing programs, right? You're out there, you're generating leads. People are giving you their information. You may not have been able to fully validate or verify all the information. It could be mobile phones, it could be something else. And so you got to make sure that you've got that collaboration and coordination with your sales team. So if they're acting on that, there maybe you had an inbound asset download, for example. That's a common one, a common marketing qualified lead. You pass it over to your salesperson. They call that person, but maybe the person's not in this country. Maybe they're, using a cell phone. They could be traveling. So you got to prep your salespeople so they know how to handle those type of scenarios as you're going
We
through this.
we give our folks, like, we will write out lots of different types of scripts, and we'll work on
True.
getting feedback from them. And it's not that the script is something they have to use like verbatim, but a good launch point, and salespeople they'll practice with that, and you can get feedback. You can adjust your scripts. You can have, like, they call them outreach programs where I
Sure.
currently work, but like, there can be a whole catalog. And also in the tools now, Nico, like, if you're in Salesforce and some of these other programs, those prompts, can
Yep.
come right up, like with Einstein and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And
Yeah.
people can have access to that information and be pretty responsive and,
And
adept
relevant. Yeah.
and
It'll pay
adapt.
attention to that person. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that takes me to my next point that I want to make sure that everybody's thinking through is and I like to highlight this. We're selling to people, and so we having a relationship mindset is absolutely already, just if you switch your mindset from numbers and sales to building relationships, that will allow you to identify gaps that you're having, which are resulting in low lead quality. And that right there, it will already give you the visibility and the change of perspective to see your process a little bit more clearly. A number one things that might be causing some challenges for you could be you don't have the targeting is not crisp as you think it is, and so you might need to go be more focused, collaborate with your teams, your sales team, to see who your ideal customer is. I had a situation with a big client of mine, a big telco, and you know what? They had a great avatar, a great perception of who their ideal customers are, and it wasn't wrong. But it wasn't supported by data. It was actually supported by assumptions. And so, we actually did a data project to really get to the heart of it. And you know what? It was actually bigger. Their ideal customer for that particular channel was a little bit bigger than they thought. It included more types of customers that fell into that profile. And so the same is true for you. Even if you have a small business and you're like, I know every customer, it's really important to go through that exercise of looking at the data, talking to your salespeople, looking at their data, and going through your intelligence to see who's my ideal customer. And once you know that, and you're thinking about how do you build a relationship with them, then you can start to think about the ways you want to engage them. And a lot of those ways right now in this world, in this age of AI, is around thought leadership. And what I really want to highlight as we get into the last part of our conversation with Jen is a couple of things that Jen said is being natural, right? I like to say authentic. I love both of those words, but you want to be natural and authentic. Well, why? Why is that so important? Well, because we are in the age of AI, and you've got AI videos with gorillas and orangutans and stuff with their, live streamer. I'm sure you've all seen it, right? And it's all 100% fabricated. And you kind of know, but as this is just the early days, guys. If it's that good now, think what it'll be in 2 or 3 years, right? You won't know. I mean, I've seen Donald Trump dancing on the stage, and I know it's not him, right? And I've seen different people doing different stuff. These AI videos are hilarious, but they're going to get to a point where starting to become hard to distinguish. Mm-hmm. So what's important about that? Well, you being authentically human. A computer will never, ever be able to be a human, right? And so that will be the thing that people notice and crave. So the more that you get used to being authentic and real and yourself and comfortable with who you are, and the more that you as a lead marketer, if that's your role, that you're helping your company define its values and its culture so that can come through too, you're going to get along just fine, right? You'll figure out your lane, and that will help you reach that target customer and talk to them about something they're going to want to hear about. The perfect muffin, the perfect lead gen program, the perfect network slicing strategy, right? Whatever it is, right? You'll figure out your way to get to it. So I have one more question. I have a couple of things that I just want to highlight as we go into the last part of our conversation. So analytics and tracking. So like I said, next week, I'm having the folks at ZoomInfo join us. So if you're selling to businesses, you're a B2B company, you sell tech solutions or anything like that, and a lot of my customers, a lot of people in my following are in that space, absolutely join us. We're going to be talking about intent. We're going to be talking about advanced ID graph for account-based marketing, all the tools. There's a bunch of AI-led tools. There's a bunch of just super deep, rich ID graph related tools. That's like deep intelligence is what I call it. That will help you to not only identify, and build your audiences, because that's interesting and that's a whole fun thing. But here's where it becomes a killer. And Jen, I want to show your slide.
Okay.
So look at this. So we're going to put this on the stage. So look at this. These are all things involved in the whole marketing universe. So Jen, I'm gonna let you talk us through it, and then I'll go finish my point.
Sometimes when I walk into the marketing department and you hear everybody using these words, and there's that moment where you're like, well, what are we talking about here? Because really we're just trying to reach,
Mhm.
we're trying to reach people with stuff that we need. And I think that some of these words become very, very intimidating. And I guess I'm maybe a little bit old school, but I remember when I first started in product and marketing, it was just about creating a stellar, unbelievable customer experience. And that
Mhm.
meant all the way from the marketing shop, all the way for them getting their product and service, and all the way through care and everything that came after. And to me, it's just funny today. Like if I tell my mom what I do and I wrap all this stuff off to her, she's going to be like, I have no idea what you're saying. So to me, it's just like, okay, it's like what Nico said. All of this is part of it. We have to have an understanding of it. We have to do these things, but at the heart of it, we're just trying to talk to people. We're just trying to be human and develop our relationships.
That's right. Nurturing relationships. So the point that I was making earlier is, thank you for that, Jen,
Oh, sure.
is, as you change your mindset and you start to look at how you're building these relationships, you're finding these people, then you can start to think about the tools that are going to help you do that. And so next week's conversation is going to go deep into the tech. So today we're talking about the strategy, the mindset, the perspective, which is for you. And basically it took all this time for this woman to get to my point, which is, baby, think about building relationships with people. People are the ones who buy your products. And so that's really what, the main point is make sure that you're thinking about building relationships with people, and those people are the ones that will buy your products. Next week, we're going to talk about the technology to do it. And the folks at Zoom Info have got a really incredible suite. It's like in his third year or fourth year, but it's backed by their massive database, and it's backed by a ton of intelligence where you could build your audience, your ideal audience that you can email, right? Which we know how to do that. And I know a lot of us want to improve our emails, and honey, that'll be a separate clinic. If you want to do a special workshop with me, please feel free to do it. It's free. I would love to do it. Just hit me up on my website, and I'll put a QR code in there in a little bit. But email is just the start. What if you wanted to run ads to those exact same people that you're emailing? If you want to run Google ads, display ads, ads on Facebook, ads on Instagram, ads on LinkedIn, that's been the marketer's dream for like ever. That you're like, I've got this great email audience, and okay, I can upload it into Facebook, but Facebook can only find 10%, 20%, right? And that's just too small. And okay, yeah, I can go to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's got a great match rate, but LinkedIn's super expensive. And LinkedIn's not the only place where my future customers are. They're on Google, they're in mobile ads, they're in, different places. And so I'm trying to reach them. Well, using these kind of tools, Marketing OS from ZoomInfo is not the only one. There's companies like LiveRamp and oh gosh, Demandbase and 6sense. There's a bunch of them, out there. I like the ZoomInfo dudes. They're my buds. I really like those guys. For a whole bunch of reasons, but I like their tool because it's really they just making it better and better every year. But it's backed by some really high quality data, and that's really what it boils down to, is that universe that who's out there. And so that's what we're going to be talking about next week as we wrap up today's conversation, which is all about your strategy and your mindset. We talked about analytics and tracking. So the most important thing for you guys to remember is, how do you fix gaps in your lead gen funnel? How do you improve in quality? The first thing to start with is to obviously make sure you know who you're targeting, and that you make sure that you remain relevant, that you've got thought leadership, you've got intelligence about that audience. A few tips that you might not be thinking about. There's some tools out there that will help you pay attention to who's visiting your website. You might be using ads in, that was another area. How do I improve my paid media? You probably got Facebook ads. Maybe you're doing LinkedIn ads. Maybe you're doing ads in different platforms. Make sure that you're really analyzing your retargeting audiences. You're looking at that. You're rotating them. You're monitoring and measuring, and really looking at all your tracking tech so that you can get a better understanding of who's engaging with your communications and who is actually taking action. There's different tools that you can have. Then not all of them are going to give you all the bells and whistles that you might get from the tools that we have from ZoomInfo, but we can work with you so you can gain access to some of that. The next thing to talk about, and Jen, I would love for you to mention it because you had it on your list, which was trigger emails, and automation. personalization and automation. Oh my gosh, right? What does
Oh,
that look like? And there's so many ways to do that. But what's one of your favorite ways that's like the most straightforward to personalize and automate marketing
you know,
communications?
right now what we're working on is, even just for our audiences for the webinars, we know that we'll have, say, like manager level, all the way up to CIO level, for a webinar. And I don't necessarily want to talk to them exactly the same. So we're developing that level of personalization to be as relevant as the tool can help us be, to understand maybe what they're exactly working on to make that messaging better. Again, so like maybe we had 5 different versions of the email. Now we could maybe have 25. And it's just a little bit more meaningful for the recipient, and that, at least that's what we're finding with our data. So we've been using it in that way. And then the automation, this kind of goes more into your ABM stuff, Nico, but we're really working on getting that, being able to bring that data in so you can kind of look at what's happening in a company, in terms of what are they looking to purchase. And you're really capturing so much data from, people are looking at things in different media outlets. They might work
Yeah.
for the same company, might be seeing different titles, doing things, and you're like, wow, that hits. It looks like they're looking for something that I have. So we start being able to collect that information, and then we can start, again, nurturing them in a different way, that seems relevant. So the automation is happening. Demandbase and Sixth Sense are some things that we've been using, and it's
Cool.
super sophisticated. So
Mm-hmm.
and we use these words like triggers, but it's like when someone does something, there's like an alert, and it's like, hey, here's some options. But as a marketer, you can kind of go in there and make some
Yeah.
decisions, right? And you can say,
Yeah.
you know what, I don't maybe want to retarget them quite like that. Maybe I want to do something a little bit different with that. So I think it's just about really being able to kind of look at the journeys that you're seeing. Like, we think we know the journey, like there's a general journey, but the way people hop around and move around and do things, that's
Yeah.
not a straight line. That's all over the place.
Absolutely.
So
No, that's a great point.
just, I think you have to look at your data and kind of just keep drilling into it to understand the behaviors. And then it'll make whatever you do in terms of saying, I have a journey for this different persona, this one persona, it'll
Mhm.
just make that journey better. It'll just
For
keep
sure.
enhancing it.
Can you go on baby steps? So you talked about demand base and Sixth Sense, and that's great. You talked about trigger emails, and then you talked about having 25 segments. Oh my gosh! So that's 25 different messages or variations of the same message. But what if we had a small or a mid-sized business marketer? Can they go in baby steps with some of the stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I didn't have a tool that would help me do that quickly, I
Hmm.
think you have to use your instincts here a bit.
Yeah.
You cover what makes sense. Like, I think if I were a smaller business owner, I would just make sure I really understood all my ideal customer types.
Yeah.
And I would be wanting to chat with them, and I would be wanting a feedback loop from them. I want them communicating with me, telling them what they need, telling me what they
Yeah.
like, telling me, hey, you got a little improvement here. Looking at those feedback loops so I can keep communicating with them. And then I do love, tools that help you with, like, say, they call them lookalike audiences, but
Yep.
help me move a little bit. Like, help me take a baby step to maybe, is there another customer that kind of resembles this one I have? Because I'd like to see if I
Mhm.
can talk to them. Then you can just start experimenting to see if that group really works for you or not.
Mhm.
We've done that with some different, like, little niche technology products too. Like, you think you're going to start
Mhm.
one place, and you end up finding out, hey, I got to go to a maker space and sell this product here.
Yes. Yes.
And when you get to the maker space, you start understanding the different people coming to the maker space. And I'm just one of those people that'll go there and start to, like, see,
Mhm.
hey, are you using my 3D printer? Are you using that 3D scanner we brought in? What
Yeah.
are you using it for? So I still think there's a lot to be learned by going out and seeing things for yourself, and not necessarily just relying on the click data either, because your product's going to go somewhere, and just finding out what your users think. So then you can take the baby steps you need instead of trying to go, I'm going to be in world domination right now.
Right, right. One step at a time, right? Eat that elephant one bite at a time. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that was such a great insight, which is, go slow, start small, build your way up. If you've already got, an infrastructure in place, each of us have our different ways that we go about meeting new customers and building relationships, add to it. There's definitely a lot going on in this age of AI. So start thinking about what's your slice, right? How do you add that into your mix? How do you keep from distracting from your authentic self, but add in some of these new capabilities and these new places to be? Another thing is if you're not doing much in social today,
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage you to reconsider that. Because a lot of big brands, a lot of little brands are in social, and a lot of your future customers are in social. And learning how to be comfortable in social and how to move in a way that makes sense and that is relevant. It is a skill. It does take some getting used to if you're not used to being there. So it's better to get there and start getting used to it, right? What do you think, Jen?
I think so. And I think if you aren't really comfortable, get an intern, because your interns will
They
know
will be. They
every,
are web native.
they will be doing it all at once, all the time. And you'll be like, wow, I don't even think like that. But, what's good about it is you can kind of see
For
how they work,
sure.
and you can kind of get used to, you don't have to have it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you're just kind of chatting on some of the channels. Some it's more formal, like LinkedIn.
Mhm.
That's going to be a little bit different. That sometimes
Yeah.
that sometimes replaces us. That's going to replace a sales call most of the time. That's how people are going to go
Good. Yeah.
try to connect with somebody. So yeah, definitely on the social. That, to me, I think the thing that might be too much for folks is just there's so many channels. So learning how to
Mhm.
prioritize which ones work with your ideal customers. And
Yeah.
start there, and then you can always add on. And there's platforms to help you say, "Hey, I've got some messages, and I need to now put them out on
Like Hootsuite.
on
Yeah.
8
For
channels,"
sure.
and you can build it out that way.
For sure, absolutely. Start small. That's the other thing. From us two lovely ladies, right? All you lovely people, is start small, work your way up. If you already feel like I got a good game, but I have some little issues, change your mindset, change your perspective. If you're like, okay, I already got a relationship mindset, but my lead gen funnel isn't going as great as I wanted to. Okay, now dig into, can you add more intelligence, right? Are there gaps in your intelligence that you could fill to get a better picture of how your customers, who they are, how they integrate with you, how they interact with you? If you're like, I'm good there, baby, but I'm still not getting the conversions, well, now you got to look at what you're sharing, right? Is your thought leadership on point? Are you relevant? Are you sharing things that they want to hear about? And I'm always like to be candid and open. As I started this webinar series almost 2 years ago, and it's been building up, and now we're turning it into a podcast, and we see our followers growing. But not every webinar has hundreds of attendees, because not everybody's interested in every topic that we talk about. But we believe that each of these topics matter, but they might not matter to every business, right? So, some topics are big ones, like later this year, we're doing one about why you need a lawyer now before you need one. Right? Why it's good to have a lawyer now before you need a lawyer. And another one that we're doing is, what's the benefit of having a CPA? How is that useful? And it's super useful. And I got me an IRS auditor who's going to be joining the conversation, as well as an accountant, a CPA. So it'll be really fun. But the point that I'm making is, not every piece of content and not every campaign is going to be a, raging success. But really, well, what is a success, right? What is a raging success? And what is a good number of organic clicks, and what are success metrics in today's world? And so that would be the other thing I would say to you guys is, if you're not getting the conversions you're looking at, there's lots of things to look at. The 3 things we pointed out was relationship mindset, intelligence, and thought leadership. But when it comes to the thought leadership piece, it's about connecting with that right customer, and that right customer might be a small group. And so you might only make a few small connections, but they're high quality. And that's really what it's about. It's not always trying to knock the ball out of the park, right? It's about connecting with that right person. That's really what it ultimately ends up being about. Okay, so last bits as we're wrapping up, because we're almost at the hour. We talked about personalization and automation. Thank you so much, Jen. So the last thing is collaboration and coordination. And I'll just kick us off with, I think is if you are a small business, you might not have a marketing department and a sales department, but you might have a marketing person who does it and a salesperson, and they might not be well aligned. And even if you're in a big company and you have departments, what's really important in today's world is that marketing and sales are really aligned and that they actually are really integrated. That's where we're heading. And that's really where a lot of the most successful companies are, is that they're actually their teams, they're a team together. They're starting to call it revenue operations, right? Chief revenue officer and marketing and sales all belong into this sort of, silo under, revenue operations, because right, marketing's job is there to make people want to consider your brand and attract them to your brand. And sales job is to take those people who are starting to discover you, those relationships that you're starting, and to nurture and progress them. And a lot of times salespeople need support from marketers, right, to help them, like what Jen was saying, is it a script? Are there some talking points? Are there some key things? Are there some assets they could share so they can keep nurturing that relationship? And marketing, it really benefits from getting feedback from salespeople to be like, you know what, these people who came into the funnel were really good, but these ones weren't. And here's some course adjustments to make. And hey, I would rather have less. I hear that all the time, you guys, from my clients that are, and we do a lot of like lead generation, where people are paying lots of money to have a conversation with a future customer. And they're always like, less is more. They would want way better quality, because I only do quality, y'all. But they would. I've heard that, because there's a lot of companies that, I'll give you a lead for $50, $500, whatever it is. Meanwhile, my prices are not in that ballpark for that kind of a service. But when they get the difference and they're like, oh yeah, I'll take quality all day, all night over quantity, right?
Oh, it's so much better. I mean, I'm trying to go for like the higher quality ones. I mean, for people who are super interested, because you actually use your time so much better, all your resources so much better, and you don't have people kind of going. Getting to that is the key, and so there's ways to get there for sure. There's not a perfect formula though. Everybody's kind of got to work through it for their own business.
Absolutely. And it's unique to each of your businesses. But some things that might help if you are running into issues and you don't have enough quality leads. So like Jen said, make sure you know who you're targeting. Segment. Sometimes who you're targeting for one thing isn't a fit for who you might target for another thing. And that's okay. It's okay to have some segments in how you go to market. It's important to make sure you're getting that good intelligence and how they're engaging. And some of these intelligence products are different than what you're used to. And so this is a great time to learn. You could work with a partner like us that could help you learn that, or give you access to tools that might be too expensive to just buy on your own. And then the last thing is really to have that collaboration as you have leads coming into your funnel, talking to sales, teeing them up. Another thing that we've learned, and I'll leave you guys with this last thought: salespeople don't always like to nurture leads. So what we've been doing in some of our more successful programs is, we build programs to generate demand and identify the leads. We go through a process with the salesperson to understand what quality, how they want to be vetted. We vet them, we pass them over to the salesperson, and then the salesperson further vets them from that first, one or two conversations. Then they know where they are in their buying cycle. Are they at the discovery phase where they're just learning, and it might be 6 months, it might be a year, depending on what they're buying, that they're discovering and they're figuring it out? Are they at their try phase where they've already kind of gone through some stuff? They want to see a demo and they're deciding who they're going to buy, right? There's different stages. And so the salesperson is always going to be the best person to determine that. But once we have that classification, then we start to segment those opportunities out, right? The ones that are nurture, right, where they need 6 months or longer, when they go right on back to marketing. And that's where we use all of our fancy tools to stay in front of that person, and to do so in as personal a way as possible, on using the name of the salesperson, right? There's all kind of tips and tricks and tools to help you do that. There's nothing real simple. So I wish I could say that, oh yeah, just go set up HubSpot or Demandbase or whatever it is. There's really nothing really simple that's all woven together very well at this juncture. And it might be a while. It might be my solution, y'all, but it might take some time to get there. But as a marketer, there's definitely solutions that you can find. There's tactics or strategies you could find to start to improve how you nurture those leads once your salespeople have made that first introduction. And so that, my dearest, my darlings, is getting us to the end of our conversation today. Oh my gosh, this is really a 10-hour conversation. So I'm sure there's so much more we could talk to you about and answer your questions about how you feel. It's a boot camp, right? It's a weekend with lots of mimosas. If you still have questions, and you might, please don't hesitate to, join us. Thank you so much for asking for the podcast link. The podcast is going to launch in December, and I'm going to launch it by doing the 30 days of delight. So my daily delights every day, I will be on and streaming for a short period of time, something positive and delightful. Thank you so much. What I will put on screen is a QR code. So feel free or visit our website, change3e.com. Because all of y'all know, I guess you were, if you joined in the VIP webinar, then I know you know the website. But if you're watching us on the stream, you might not have seen it. So, definitely join us, change3e.com. You can use this QR code as well, if that works for you. I'm going to give Jen a chance to give her closing thoughts, and then I'll wrap up, and we'll be ready for next week's conversation about ABM. So Jen, what are your last thoughts about how to fill gaps in lead generation in today's age of AI?
Just don't give up. Don't let the AI overcome you. And you know what? Just start playing with anything, whether it's ChatGPT, if that's what you have access to, and just start. You could even just say, hey, give me some ideas about my ideal customers. Here's who I think they are. Just start playing with it if you haven't already. And if you've already started, just start figuring out, hey, how can I start bringing some of this together? Because for sure, with the tools that are coming up, you're going to see, you can map the whole thing from start to finish to figure out where you have gaps. And then you can really look at it. And then it's time to kind of get back into your Excel data, right? And kind of look at that stuff and really figure out what actions you need to take.
I love it. Thank you so much.
So,
yes.
To see you in person sometime soon. And
I know. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. Jen, thank you so much for joining me today on today's conversation on Growing Happily Together. Join us next week to talk about ABM, and of course, stay connected. If you need any questions or you want to talk to Jen or myself, just contact my team. Hit us on the website, change3e.com. There's always a chat. You can leave a message, or there'll be a person on that chat, and they can schedule some time for you to talk with Jen or myself or both of us, because who doesn't want lovely women to talk to, right? And we'll be happy to do a walkthrough with you guys or to answer any questions, because this is really a big topic. There's so many facets of it, but I hope today's conversation was helpful. And remember, keep smiling, keep growing happily. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.